I think this is very exciting for me personally and for the university. While we started online teaching, I think there have been two previous attempts at CASELAP to do things online, and I will just talk about the two because it will give you the background as to why this was easy for us to start. Several years ago, I was teaching a course and a colleague of mine from Sweden wanted me to have a conversation with their students in Sweden, and I wanted her to have a conversation with my students, and we decided to do Skype. So I had a 10-minute discussion with her students on Skype. She had a 10-minute conversation with my students on Skype, and it worked. Fast forward to 2 years ago, a student of, actually one of my students is in Germany doing another master's degree, while her master's here is not yet complete, and she needed to present her proposal. The normal proposal presentation is done manually. She was going to be in Germany for 6 months. I made the decision that it is unfair to stop a student just from presenting her proposal so that faculty can listen to it. We connected her on Skype. It worked. A year ago, a student of ours was defending her thesis, and she is a member of the military. So she had been posted to Congo. She needed to defend. She could not come back. So we had to make a decision. Do we stop her from defending, or do we allow her to defend? I wrote to direct a graduate school. We had a conversation, and we agreed that this person defends. It worked. A month before the lockdown, we are having presentations. Then, because we had done this in the past, there was again another student who was away in Sweden, had gone for an exchange visit, that we have a collaboration in Gothenburg. Again, we allowed this person to present by Skype. Just after that presentation, one of our students comes and writes and says, by the way, thank you very much for doing this. But I saw the university was struggling yesterday in terms of equipment. I would like to actually donate a laptop and a projector and work with the center to see whether we can be able to get Zoom for the entire period. 2 weeks later, the lockdown happened. So when the lockdown happened, for me, the idea of moving online was only too natural. Because I was like, if we've been talking about e-learning, this is our opportunity as a university to also move on to the process. So once the opportunity came up and the Vice Chancellor made the announcement of the training, for us it was something that we were excited about and we were willing to do fairly quickly. We used Google Meets because that's the one that, when we were doing the training, that's the first one that we were told we could be able to use. So I believe that you use the tools you have. So we had Google Meets as a university. We used Google Meets and it worked. So the next question was, what do you do about examination? And I had the privilege of sitting in 2 panels discussing online learning and teaching across Africa with vice chancellors and with the faculty from several universities in Africa. Secondly, I also had the opportunity of sitting in a committee of this university looking at online regulations. I mentioned those two because the one thing that was interesting is everybody was grappling with how to offer online exams. So it wasn't a challenge only for the University of Nairobi. It was for everybody. And I told myself, if people are grappling and trying to provide solutions, as a center we have finished teaching. The only natural thing is to progress students to exams, and that's how we started exploring what platform to use. We are going to be using Google Meets, Google Classroom for carrying out exams. I think initially, like everybody else, there was fear of the unknown. There was complaints that something would not work, but I think because we gave it the idea to try. I remember one of our students is a judge. And the first time we used it, he then came back and says, Dr. Odote, you know, this has been my first time to use this kind of platform. So when the judiciary now introduced this a few weeks ago, he was ahead of the curve. I have a student who is in Uganda who, when we used the system, he says, you know, this has been very useful for me because I could not otherwise have been able to attend class because I'm now on lockdown in Uganda. I have students who then said, you know, we've been driving all over Nairobi to make time to reach Parklands in classes, in traffic jam. We pray that even once this lockdown is out, we can use this for teaching. So I think from initially being challenged, initially fearing, to when they realized that the system could work, and when we all tried, they were extremely excited because they were realizing the challenges was not just for them. There were instances where some faculty had trouble setting up the system, and I could join class just to help. Not that I knew it before. I too was learning throughout the process, but I told myself when I didn't know, I would call somebody from ICT, I would call somebody else, and we would all be learning through the process. And I think the excitement was everybody was getting better at the same time, and people were willing to learn through the process. The reality is our students are learn a public university. So the issue of challenges around technology, the issues of challenges around affordability is a legitimate challenge. But I think we always must be able to ask ourselves, how can we be able to overcome those challenges? And that's why I think for me, the idea behind giving bundles to students helps solve that thing of technology, about bundles. I think in terms of equipment, yes, all my students, when we confirmed, were able to have laptops, some were able to access through their phones, and the reality is that we have two advantages in this country that we sometimes underplay. Number one, this country's internet connectivity is amongst the highest in the world. So even as we talk about, there's lack of connectivity, the reality is that we are much better than many parts of this world in terms of connectivity. Number two, majority of our students actually have a smartphone. So they may not have a laptop, but they have a smartphone. So if we build onto that, I think it is fairly possible to overcome the challenges that we face, while admitting the fact that being a public university, issues about equipment is actually a big hindrance. It's actually possible to do exams online and be supported to be able to do those exams online. In fact, the first time we were having conversation about exams, I know colleagues were telling me it is not possible to do exams online. And the rest, I think, three issues. The issue of the connectivity will disappear, those exams will not be credible, people will not understand. A day later, I was talking to another colleague whose child was learning in the US, had come back here, and he told me, my child is doing exams now online. So I asked, how? She explained to me. So what some people were saying was not possible, somebody else was doing, and a Kenyan child. So I said, if a Kenyan child can do it here in Kenya, what stops a student at the University of Nairobi to do it? I think there are only two things that is important for us. Number one is to have the right attitude. Once you have the right attitude, you will do it. The second thing is to be willing to learn. When you're willing to learn, you will always find a solution to every technical issue. And there are many people. We have a lot of good ICT people at this university. If you talk to them and ask them, you will be amazed at what they know. But also, we have a lot of good faculty in this university. When we were designing the system, part of those who worked on the initial proposals as to what to do was not ICT, was actually a member of the teaching staff at CASELAP. We also have good students. So sometimes when you talk to a student, they tell you, I can do this. Because maybe your student is actually an IT person in some other institution. Maybe your student is a manager in some place. So we don't sometimes use the resources that we have effectively to be able to solve problems. I think because this was the first, we actually bent over backwards to try and answer all the possible challenges. Because I knew there were people who believed it would not work, there were people who were waiting for it to fail, and there were people who were waiting to criticize. So we spent the last 1 month trying to tick all the boxes. Number one, we developed draft regulations as to how we would want this to work. We tested it ourselves as a center, internally just among staff, to be sure it could work and to be able to understand it. The day we were confident it could work, we then made the proposal to the university that we would like to carry out the exam. So by the time we were approaching the university, we had done our own internal work. So I think that is important. The second is we carried all faculty together. So faculty knew what's going on. I think the third, which is important, is to realize these are exams just like every other exam. So worrying about security, worrying around integrity is critical. So we've actually passworded all our questions. Those passwords are available only with me. The password for every exam is available only with the lecturer carrying out the exam and with the examination officer. I don't even have them as the director. The password for the entire overall communication on the exams is available only with me as director and with the examination officer. So we put several layers of security such that even if you are able to access one, you will not access the other. So that's been critical. The second is the process of moderation of examinations, both internally and externally, has been done extremely transparently, done with all staff. So that's work. The third that I think is important is we've done several trial runs. First with ourselves as faculty, and secondly with our students. In fact, when we were making the proposal to do online exams, I actually had a meeting with students before faculty. So by the time I was going to faculty, I was telling faculty, students are actually saying A, B, C, D. Here are minutes from the conversations with students. Here are the challenges that students have. One of the challenges that was raised initially was the issue of power connectivity. I remember one student that still sticks to my mind, who is from Masabit, a place where there should be no connectivity, no power. Says, Dr. Odote, even if power missed, it will not miss the entire day. We can be able to do this. And the moment he made that, I now kept joking that if the guy from Masabit says we can overcome the challenges of connectivity and power, why should those of us from Asumbi and Kiambu complain? After doing that, we then had a trainings. And I suggested to ICT that I did not want a training for all the platforms because it would confuse people. Having made a choice, I said that we want a training for the platform that we will use, and we want to do it practically. We had a meeting in the morning with a technical team that I've set up, with somebody from ICT leading the process, with the examination officer, with a colleague who is good in IT, and myself, just to go through the platform and be able to see what are the different issues, how does that work, so that you see, look at it from an academic and a technical angle. In the afternoon, we did a 3-hour rehearsal. You know the rehearsal that happens in primary and secondary? We did a rehearsal for the university examination. We don't normally do so, but we did it so that everybody can work on it practically and deal with the issues. Where do you type in, where do you log in? And there were many challenges that arose, like people logging in through their addresses that are not university email addresses, people having many browsers off, and we were able to troubleshoot all those yesterday. Thereafter, we then remained as the technical team now to set up the exams for today. Yeah. The normal university exam takes 3 hours. Yes. Our exams are going to be 4 hours because I've added an extra hour for purposes of those with slow typing speed and for those with connectivity. Yesterday, the academic registrar issued instructions on online exams. In addition, I've issued instructions to my students today on the processes and also to faculty. What happens is all students will join in. First of all, they were invited to the examination hall yesterday night, so that today morning 70% of them have joined. We are working with the 30 to ensure that in the next 1 hour everybody has joined. They will all be welcomed to the invigilation room 30 minutes to time, so that we are able to ensure before we start everybody's on. You know, manually people just come. 5 minutes to time we will have the exam, actually 15 minutes to time we'll have the exam shown to them so they can read it, so that when we start at 2 o'clock everybody has been comfortable, they have seen the exam. The exam goes on until 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock they will then submit their exams to faculty. The coordinator for exams is going to be sitting at the ICT center.
In terms of experience with these examinations, I would say that for me it has been a success. First of all, I've managed to type, okay, because the major issue and major concern among most students was the issue of typing. Some were saying they're a little bit slow. So in that regard, the department saw that it's important that they add an extra hour. So I've managed to work within the stipulated time, which is a win for me. In addition, again, for me, it has been convenient because I've been able to do the exam at the comfort of my home, which is good, keeping in mind I've had a restful day in preparation for the exam. In terms of challenges, I'll just say that I don't know whether it's, for me it has been okay, but for other students, I believe most of them had the fear of losing power in the process of doing the exam. Others had the fear of internet connection. That was also another major concern that I received from the students. They were saying that they are not sure whether their internet connectivity will really work at this time, the issue of dropping off in the meeting and rejoining. In terms of recommendation for the future classes and the future students, I'll tell them that for you to be successful and for you to be able to manage in handling online classes, first, it's important to ensure that you have a good laptop in terms of power, a laptop that can store power and has a good battery. The second recommendation is to ensure that they have good internet connectivity. That is key to ensure that you remain online and you are able to successfully complete the exam as well as attend the online classes.
This has been a wonderful experience. As you said, you can do the exam from the comfort of your home. You're progressing. We're not stuck worrying about how are we going to do our exams, when our school's going to reopen and everything. So it's progress, which is good. One more thing I would really applaud, or would like to applaud, is to the IT team. We had 2 rehearsals with them. One was yesterday and one was last week, and they have been very helpful to understand the platform, because it's not as easy as it seems. You have to make sure you're signed in using the university email and etc. etc. There's so many nitty-gritties. Make sure you're typing in the answer sheet and not the question sheet. So yes, the ICT team has been very helpful with the trainings, and I would suggest like these trainings for anyone who is doing exams. It's not easy. And I feel one of the advantages we had is that we're not a big crowd. We weren't that big. So I feel it may be a challenge when you're trying to train a bigger crowd, especially when they come with undergraduate students. So that would be a concern. So you need to maybe think about how you will break it down for them. So that has been easy for us. And yes, the issues of connectivity and everything were discussed. And I guess that's the reason we got an extra hour, which really helps to, help everyone cope up with their typing speeds and the likes. So that was well noted, and I'm glad the Senate actually approved it. But another, I wouldn't say a challenge, but what has been interesting is that open book, when you hear people say open book exams and you assume, yes, it's going to be easy. That's not going to be easy. You have a lot of content. You need to filter your content. You need to make sure your content matches the questions. It's also even the questions are actually very challenging in terms of they don't test your memory, but your applicability. So yes, open books are definitely not easy, but it's been a wonderful experience.
For me, 2 things stand out. Number one, as compared to the usual exam where we sit down and write on the booklet, here another form of challenge that presents itself is how do you time yourself in terms of even typing? Because you might have the content, but you might be slow in terms of typing. So, and again, related to that is in terms of answering question, there is a challenge in regards to what extent we have to go in answering a question, as considering the fact that a page, your laptop is not the same as the one we have in the booklet. So there is that challenge of saying, have I written really enough for this question? So you are tempted to continue writing for that question, and in the process you might end up spending time in one question and time just catches up with you. And number 2, the issue of just monitoring that you are connected every time, because you are typing in the Google Doc that only operates when you are connected to the internet. So in the event that you lose connectivity, it becomes a challenge, and it may not be typing what you are trying to type. So just trying to look out for everything, as in being alert, what is happening in your laptop. Is the internet connected? Is the power on? Just trying to ensure that everything is okay before you get surprises, because you might be typing, it's been an interesting question, and all of a sudden your laptop was at 10% and it goes off. So just ensuring you monitor everything as you work on your assignment. At the same time, trying to answer. At the same time, considering that you are doing the exam, at the end of it, you have to finish your exam.